I'm looking
I
forward to it.
believe that there's a larger issue at work here, but I believe that the fundamental thing is that it appears that there is a substantial portion of the American population that's a strong believer in a centralized government with a single point of failure. I feel like we saw this in the Obama administration. People were happy to have President Obama drone anybody he wanted without any supervision. I think we saw this in the first Bush administration, or excuse me, the W. Bush administration with the Iraq War and all that jazz.
I would argue that that's a
I'm sure
stretch.
I'm quite sure you'll be doing some arguing, but I'm not even worried about that. And I think what we're seeing now with the President Trump is sort of the ultimate effort to consolidate centralized power. I think that what we're looking at is a general. I would argue that the American rhetoric around distributed power, conservatism, states' rights, small government is a hollow rhetoric, regardless of political party. And then and it's even more hollow because at least the Democratic Party doesn't really sort of tie themselves to the icon of conservatism. They say, well, government is your friend and government can help. Whereas the Republicans use this rhetoric of whatever you want to call it, conservatism, I guess, the small government and I'll stay out of my bedroom and stay out of my life and all that stuff. And yet we have a President Trump who seems to be the most ambitious to consolidate and accrue as much power as humanly possible, with apparently the total support of the American people. And I think the American people actually I think all people, not just American people, I think that all populations are vulnerable to the laziness of assigning power to a single leader. I think that's why the sort of idea of democracy was even emerged was, we have all these kings and then all these things sort of lend themselves to human nature where they're like, well, I guess Tom's in charge of everything, even though I don't like Tom.
It's why we still have religion. I mean, there's a lot of things you can argue.
There's a sort of human reflex to be like, well, at least I don't have to worry about anything because now the big man has got it or the big lady's got it or whatever. And I think that it's a super dangerous thing. And I think that it's bigger than Trump. I think Trump is exploiting it. I think Trump is exploiting it more than anybody else maybe ever has. But I think it's bigger than him.
If Bush Sr. was V1, version 1, and Obama was version 2, Trump has taken it to a new level on version 3. Because
I agree with that.
Because Biden was pretty much non-existent. So I think that this is a completely, we've entered a new paradigm with Trump, and version 3 is nothing like version 1 and version 2. I think the American people were fine with version 1 because they thought there was some kind of logic and rationale that supported the moves. I think people were absolutely fine with version 2 because Obama was one of the most popular presidents ever and came in at a very difficult time, and so he didn't come into a stock market that was at all-time highs. He didn't come into a booming economy. He came into an absolute just a disaster, an act of God, and was able to turn it around and turn us into a booming economy. And so if that's version 2, okay, fine. Version 3 is not even. It's not even like the same sport. Version
what
3,
what are the keys? Like, let's assume that there was always a mild preference to allow a centralized power.
Yeah. Okay.
And previously,
well,
what is the key distinction? Where is the fork in the road on this?
Well, the key distinction is that we've gone from a country of people with spines to a country of people without spines. And what that basically means is that the number of people that have moved over, into what I call the spineless camp, it's essentially just, we've completely destroyed the notion of, a traditional kind of rules of economics or rules of the ecosystem, and we have we've slipped into something that's I think pretty ugly, and I think that's a fun topic for discussion because the concept of centralized power, like I don't want to have a big social or necessarily social or political discussion but I want to talk about how that applies to financial markets and how it applies to our financial ecosystem and to our position as a global leader, whether it means trade or whatever else it is. And I want to talk about the dangers of where we're going, because we've never seen something like we're experiencing today actually in an unwind state. Everything goes great when you're winning, but as soon as you start to lose, a more traditional system or normalized system has ways that you can balance out the losing and ways you can protect yourself and things you can do. When you have a centralized system, it's almost impossible, to resolve the losers. So it's a very different unwind. And that's what scares me the most. When you're winning.
So speak to me without metaphor. Speak to me with.
Well, when things are going good, there's not a lot you have to, there's not a lot to worry about when things are going good. And right now, you've got, a reasonably good situation powered by a strong stock market, powered by, reasonably low interest rates. There's powered by a lot of strong companies, powered by global dominance, blah, 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 all the above. Everything is cyclical. And the difference is, just like anything else, when you consolidate power, and you consolidate decision-making, and you change what has been traditionally the rules of the economy to something else, then whenever this situation turns, whatever that means. So it just means, I like to call it, because I'm a trader, I like to call it an unwind. It's essentially how you get out of everything. But when we unwind everything, whatever that looks like, whenever there's some kind of reversal, when you have a centralized system, there's no distribution of risk. So power is centralized on the way up, and risk is centralized on the way down. And there's no way to distribute that risk. So you can't effectively lower the volatility of all that risk, because it's all centralized. It's the same thing as having think of it like having an entire portfolio in one stock. There's nothing you can do when that stock turns around and goes down. You're trapped like a rat. When that stock's
how does that work in the context of the U.S. government? If all the power
when that stock's going higher, you look like a genius. The problem is, in the context of the U.S. government, and lots of people have been writing about this, right now, the U.S. government is essentially deciding who they want to hold that power. And that goes counter to everything that free markets are all about. That is not
But I guess what I'm getting at is, I agree, I get all that, but how does the actual risk if you have a single point of failure and all this power in one location, being the White House, and then things go poorly, meaning we go into there's the unemployment goes up, inflation,
could be anything, sure.
Social instability, all the negatives that can manifest. How does that play out in a centralized response, centralized risk versus distributed risk?
It's grossly accelerated. So what happens in a centralized response is there's only, here, picture it like this. You're in a crowded stadium, and there's 17 fire exits. There's 17 exits.
Stadium. Perhaps Yankee Stadium.
It doesn't matter. Whatever stadium you want. Perhaps Yankee Stadium. And there's people taking pictures in Yankee Stadium, just whatever. And then a fire breaks out, and there's 17 or 20 different exits around the stadium. Everybody runs for an exit. Everybody gets out. Everything's fine. It's a little scary, but everybody gets out. Now, in this other situation, there's only one exit, and everybody goes for that exit together, and it doesn't work because everybody gets squashed to the door. That's the difference. I totally understand that, but what I'm trying to connect the dots of what does that means that unemployment accelerates higher than it should. That means that inflation is more than it should. Well, you're asking. I don't know, because what's happening right now, and this is the scary part, is we are artificially determining who gets to play, right? Because we're setting the rules. We're setting the tariffs, we're setting the rules. So we are artificially determining who gets to play. This is not a true free market. This is not free trade. We are deciding who gets to play. We are deciding what price they pay. We are deciding who they get to play with, who are the winners going to be, and who are the losers going to be. So we are now, the government, which is not the group that you want to be making these decisions, and worse than the government.
Look at the Soviet Union. Look at
it's worse than the government. It's one person deciding again who can play, okay, what price they pay, and who's going to win,
play with.
Who they can play with, who's going to win, who's going to lose, how much are you going to win, how much are you going to lose, and it's one person who's got their paws in everything. We're talking about from college football, okay, to professional sports, to cultural events, right? You name it, like, to pop singers, and you can go on the list to who gets to have, to who should be running Intel, for example.
No, I get it.
Like who should be running Goldman Sachs? Like this is the most over the top, egregious abuse of power we've ever seen. There's nothing like it. And no, I'm not disputing anything. The reason I'm pausing. So that basically what that means is that the price of things could change dramatically in the unwind, right? Like what happens when you have a rigged game? Product quality is compromised because quality of the product becomes less relevant because it's just basically whoever the chosen one is, even if it's a lousy product. Supply. I mean, the most dramatic risk that you're talking about is supply shortages, price volatility. I mean, do you think that this sets up a stock market? That does this create a risk for the current? I mean, the obvious thing is a risk for the currency, but I feel like the currency is pretty well protected because there's no alternative. So even if it's a total fiasco, where are you going to go? I get. I'm just trying to sort of game out where. Well, the challenge, Dylan, is that we have a system in our government. There's a system of checks and balances all the way down, and there's supposed to be, even in your own party, there's supposed to be, objective discourse and suggestions. There's supposed to be two-sided discussions. There's supposed to be even an internal debate. We're supposed to have at least think about this thing intellectually. And again, I'm just going to say that it feels like it is a very one-dimensional, static government now where there is no opposition to anything. Somebody does something that is beyond ridiculous, like fire the person who's the BLS the BLS commissioner because they don't like the statistics, and your Treasury Secretary and your Treasury Secretary, the deputy for I forgot which other department it was, but deputy on the accounting side, whatever that group is called. They're all like, oh well, yeah, the president's right. I'm like, what? How's that possible?
No, I know that. I was walking on the street a couple of days ago, and we did, because when you said this, we talked about this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And like you've been incredulous from time to time as a result of a lot of these things, but your incredulity that everybody's like, okay, I don't know, you're just making me laugh. But it's not funny at all. It's a huge red flag that you could have senior adult administration officials in the most powerful government on earth tolerate sort of such obvious absurdity.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to sort of get past
it's
all
not,
the absurdity.
You understand, this is not how we work in any part of our lives. None of us. I mean, you go to
You can't
work.
make a decision with a 3-year-old child like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a 3-year-old child's like, no, this is a hamburger. You can't be like, no, it's not a hamburger. Like the 3-year-old knows that's a hamburger.
Every single company in America, every single successful company, if the CEO loses their mind for whatever reason, every single person around them tells them, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What's going on? This is not how we operate our business.
To intervene. There's some mechanism to intervene.
Boards are not scared. They're not scared. They weren't scared to fire Steve Jobs. They weren't scared.
Michael Eisner out of Disney, they'll go crazy. They'll pile like a pack of hyenas and toss you out.
They'll do it for anybody they think now. It's not that's the way we operate. Okay, but in this case, sorry, can't do nothing. It's crazy. Anyway,
where does the risk? I understand the metaphorical risk. I'm trying to sort of identify the physical risk, whether it's in the currency.
Well, it's my same analogy I use for money managers. Bull markets make all money managers look like geniuses. Mm-hmm. And some of them are incredibly stupid and know nothing about markets. But bull markets make every single money manager out there that's just tracking some index or whatever it is, or overweighted, and they're all geniuses. At market highs, everybody's a genius. At market lows, everybody's a dumbass. Okay, it's just the way it works. And so right now, it's very difficult to challenge when everything is working, because it's a bull market. Everybody's a genius. That's the whole problem. Everything works. You could have the dumbest trade policy in the world, which I think Trump has initiated. You could have some of the dumbest policies. You could have the worst. You can have the worst supporting cast. And as long as Palantir goes up and Nvidia goes up and Apple goes up, it doesn't matter. Okay. So what you essentially do is you have all these idiotic policies, and then you set up a tariff platform that essentially protects the firms that you need to go higher in order to protect your agenda. And that works until it doesn't. Because as long as you are able to protect the firms that you can argue, well, you see, it's working because the stock market's at all-time highs. So if you can protect those firms and hurt their enemies, then essentially you've basically protected yourself, because the proof is in the pudding. It's the same thing. You can gut your team, you can gut your firm, you can do everything you want, but as long as you're winning games, nobody cares. And that's the way it is right now.
What is losing games in this context? A decline in the stock market, an elevation in unemployment. What is losing games in this metaphor relative to a government or a country? I guess.
Well, the difference is in sports. When you win, nobody cares about anything else, and when you lose, nobody cares about anything else. And in the government, it's in the situation, it's all about the perception. And when the stock market's making new highs because you have the same concentrated group of 7 or 10 stocks that are making up, 40 to 50% of the indices, and they're making new highs because you're protecting them with a trade policy, and you're protecting them with very advantageous regulatory. You've basically removed the regulatory limits that hold them back, and you've essentially you've said, hey, whatever you need to do to keep this machine going, keep doing it. And in return for that, I'll keep supporting you, but it's at the expense of everybody else. There you go. When this turns around, then we're going to have issues, because that's my whole point.
Turns around meaning the stock market goes into decline? Is that what turning around looks like?
Well, the stock market will probably be the leader to the downside, and then the economy will follow.
Meaning unemployment.
It's not just unemployment, but unemployment will be a big part of it.
And then inflation.
It's not just inflation, but inflation will be a big part of it.
So the unwind looks like a declining stock market, rising unemployment, and rising inflation.
With a lot of
social unrest.
With a lot of concentrated asset risk, because that's what happens. It's like an exaggeration of what happened in April, but in a much longer, drawn out decline.
Right.
But you know what? The bad thing about it is that's not how you build for the future. That's how you mortgage the future to build for the immediate term to take care of whatever, yourself in a very short term. The difference between sports and between running running a country and things like that is if you're a sports team, you have to play for now. Like if you think you have a chance to win the Super Bowl, or you think you have a chance to win the World Series, since we brought up the Yankees before, or you think you have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, you go all in. Okay, you get rid of your future talent.
You pay money for old men that are in their last year.
You go out and you get whatever you need to do. You go get that pitcher. You go get that. You get whatever superstar you can get that you don't.
The young.
You get rid of the young. You get rid of some of the young talent that's gonna be around for 20 years because you got to win because it's so hard to win. You got to win now, so you get rid of it. That's totally okay for sports. Because everybody needs to win. So you win now, great. Everybody forgives you. In the rest of the world, in life, it doesn't work like that. We can't mortgage our kids' future. We can't mortgage our kids and their kids, their future for now. And that's the difference. That's the difference between real world economies and sports. Sports, you can mortgage the future. Real world, you can't do that. And so I feel like that's the mistake that we're making. We are closer, and I know our producers are going to hate this, but we are closer to a weird form of socialism now than we've ever been in the last 50 years. And it's all under Trump. The whole speech of, I don't want to be a communist, I don't want to be a socialist. We are the closest thing we've ever been to a form of socialism right now, a form of it. It's our own kind of bastardized form. But that's how close we are.
Socialism meaning consolidated control of resources.
That's right. That's right. A true free market is a distribution of opportunity and a distribution of power. And in a socialist society,
Louis Brandeis once advocated.
There you go.
But I'm sorry, I interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I'm done.
More importantly, this is a contradiction to the very values of traditional republicanism, which has always, at least rhetorically, been the opposite of this.
There's no such thing as the Republican Party, and the Republican platform as it once stood is no longer. There's no such thing as a Republican anymore. There's MAGA and there's everybody else. There's no Republicans anymore. The Republican Party has left the building, and they're not coming back because they are truly a bunch of sheep, and they're not coming back. And that may be what they needed, was to burn it down and start all over again. But it's a dangerous start.
My concern is that this is a kind of a one-way street. Going back to my comments about W or Obama, that as presidential powers accrue, whether it's Patriot Act, whether it's national security, whether it's an intervention with the financial markets, or all these executive orders, as presidential powers accrue from one presidency to the next, and as sort of new boundaries of power are established from one presidency to the next, that each successive president that there is no incentive, or that it's unlikely that each successive president will diminish those power. I mean, Joe Biden ran for president promising, I'm a one-term president, then we'll bring in new leadership, blah, 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 only to get to the end of his term and insist that he needs to run again because the country needs him.
Okay.
I mean, George Washington is famous, our first president, for facilitating a peaceful transfer of power to the second president, John Adams or whatever, and he's sort of celebrated for his willingness to curb his own powers. And so, Trump, for sure, in my opinion, is the most abusive and extreme, maybe 10x any prior person. I don't disagree with that, but I am concerned that even if, some, some young Democrat becomes the next president, that they're going to be just as that the whole point of America, and it's in the whole celebration of the Constitution and the three branches and all these things, was to create a structure that naturally creates barriers to the human tendency to want to have total power. The three branches of government, the Supreme Court this, the Congress that, the House this, the Senate that. And what appears to have happened is that entire system is broken down. And so what we're witnessing is an abuse of the opportunity, the facilitation of the loss of boundaries, or the loss of checks and balances, has opened an opportunity for this president to be abusive in a way that no president has before. But the issue is not just the abuse. The issue is the absence of checks and balances, which I don't know that they're going to come back.
Of course it is. This is just,
But I mean, do you think checks and balances return to the American way of life, or do you think we're now in a new world?
No, I think it returns. I think this is just because I think we're just hitting a new low, and we will recover because people will realize this is not what America is. This is not who we are. And I don't know what happened this time, but there's a first time for everything, and this is just it's incredible. The system works. It's like this time, we're seeing something we've never seen before, and the level of abuse it's incredible. But I think politicians are going to wake up and they're going to realize, I didn't do this to be a spineless ass kisser. I did this because I really believe in a platform. I believe in something. And I think that, you're going to see the American people will vote, and they will express their disgust with this, because this is not what we believe as a country.
And how will that's through a Democrat?
I don't know. It doesn't have to be through a Democrat. It could be through a Republican.
It could be through another Republican.
Sure. I mean, you see Republican town halls right now. The Trump polling numbers are the lowest ever in the history of a sitting American president. I mean, people don't like him. He's the most hated president ever. This is not something, he doesn't want you
You're
to
saying
think.
even if it's a different Republican, the chances that you have, anyway, I just don't understand it. I don't understand the absence of any resistance.
Of course you can't understand it, because nobody can understand it. Anybody with a brain can't understand it. But to
your point about the Treasury Secretary or the Commerce Secretary being like, yeah, well, the numbers are all fake. Never mind.
Yeah. How do you have a Treasury Secretary without a spine? How do you have other people that would literally without a spine? I don't even understand it, but it's happened. And, in his first term, Trump brought on people with spines, and they all turned on him. So this time he basically did a resume search on LinkedIn to find people that didn't have a spine. Number one requirement: if you don't have a spine, you can apply for a job. And if you're going to do whatever I say, you can apply for a job. So, he got Pam Bondi, and he got Scott Bessent, and he got a couple of other lackeys, and that's it.
Yeah. But that doesn't explain the Republican majority in the Congress.
No, what it doesn't explain is a bunch of smart people out there that think that it's okay. And those people, the reason they think it's okay is because they're invested in Meta, they're invested in Apple, they're invested in, Palantir, and so they're turning they're turning a blind eye, and they're okay with it. If those stocks go lower, they're not going to be okay with it. So you've got these just miserable pricks like, Bill Ackman and other people like that are just, the Mark Andreessens of the world, the Peter Thiels of the world. Of course, the Peter Thiels of the world, love this because, you make, I don't know, $1 trillion or $500 billion.
A billion a day, baby.
A billion a day. Sure. So of course you love Trump. You sell your soul for that. But for the average person, it's a little different.
if there's a, where do you think, where does the reversal first manifest? In other words, was the dollar
Come on, man. Nobody, if any of us knew the answer to that,
new?
it would
Fair enough.
be, you know,
Fair
you
enough.
you could actually make
You're right.
$100 million. I
You're
mean,
right.
you know, we've been trying to guess that.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Impossible. It's impossible.
In fact, though,
when and where is both impossible.
which one? What? Say it again.
When it would happen and where
Oh
it would
yeah,
happen
yeah,
are both
yeah,
impossible.
yeah. Sure, it's impossible. Nobody knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you least expect it, expect it. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a world where the incredible buoyancy of the super tech actually has the sort of a ripple that it creates some insulation, that there's so much wealth that spreads around that it sort of has it's insulating, you know, that it moves outside of itself, that it does sort of spread out?
You know, that's a really good question.
That there's just so much money, it's like foaming the runway, even though there's going to be a wreck, that there's just so much froth that it's like not going to be that the risk is less than you might think, only because of the so much foam on the runway, basically, to use my metaphor.
I mean, that's a very good point. And the question becomes, you know, if you're a $4.5 trillion if you're a $4.5 trillion company like Nvidia is, or Microsoft or Apple, whatever, and you lose $1 trillion, okay, in market cap, does it really change anything?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. And that's a good point. You know, have these companies,
there's so much buoyancy that you can tolerate a 25% impairment and not be that alarmed.
Yeah. And that's the dangerous part about, you know, that's one of the dangerous things about the government, you know, basically the executive branch essentially deciding who wins and who loses. And now what does change now is that this puts an incredible amount of pressure on the 2028 election and beyond, because this is like, you got a big bully who's protecting, you know, this incredible amount of growth, and in return you give this bully, you know, a few $100 million, which to you is nothing. You know, you know, I mean, it's literally nothing. Like, it doesn't even matter. So, you know, so companies can write $1 billion check, and it doesn't even, you know, it's pocket change, it's couch money. And so, you know, how does this change the landscape of what's going to happen? Because there's big money at stake.
So much basically, there's a lot of tolerance for a big reversal.
Sure.
Just because of the buoyancy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you already see that the backbone, you know, of, you know, the Mark Zuckerbergs or the Tim Cooks or the Jeff Bezos, you already see that they have no backbone. You know, they don't believe in anything other than the value of their company. That's it. So, you know, they don't care about a single thing. So, you know, listen, I don't trust them as for anything.
You can't trust any of them for anything.
Well, I think there are still some good people out there, but who knows?
Well, thus my whole hypothesis I've been asserting on Overtime the last week or two with Vecchio and Spivak is stop thinking and just buy them. Like that, because all your thought is going to get you into rational analysis that's going to identify all kinds of never-ending list of risk.
Well, traders don't, you know, from a trader perspective, no, you can never, the no thinking thing is great for trading, because trading is about you know, you can't start thinking about macro crap. It's terrible
for a country, but it's bad for humans in a country.
I mean, it's great for a podcast, you know. It's great for a podcast. That's it.
Yeah. But it's not good for the life of a human.
Right.
Thinking is recommended.
Let's put it this way, Dylan. For mostly everything you do in life, thinking is recommended.
Okay.
but you know, for trading, not for trading. Not for trading.
All right. Well, fortunately, I've been around the block long enough. I'm very thoughtful. and I make very prudent decisions despite what people may perceive.
I like it. Well, this was a very fun discussion, and I'm glad we had it today because it's a little bit different, and I'm sure we upset some people. I'm sure we made some other people happy, but it's just always fun to have these discussions because I think, America's at an interesting crossroads with what's happening with the centralization of our government and especially of our executive branch. And I think that to put your head under a pillow or hide in the sand or do whatever, it is you're doing, I don't think you're being fair to, you're playing the bull market makes geniuses of everybody. And I don't think that's a fair way to look at, the future and our kids' future and our grandkids' future and everything else. So I think we got to be more real about this. But Dylan, thank you very much for playing along at home. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. We'll see everybody at overtime in about an hour and a half. So I'll be back.
Yeah. Hang on for 1 second, Dylan. Hang on.
All right.
If you're not subscribed, subscribe right here. And if you want to meet me and the team in person at our next live event, hit the link at the top of the description.